Welcome to the regular council meeting for Tuesday, July 18th. It's the afternoon meeting. This meeting is being recorded live and is streaming on the District of Summerland YouTube channel. All representations to council, written or verbal, will form part of the public record and be available to the public for viewing electronically or as a written record. I'd like to call the meeting to order and corporate officer, any late items? No late items. Approval of the agenda, please. Councillor Trainer, Councillor Peak, all in favor? That carries. Consent agenda. We have some minutes and some correspondence. Would anybody like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Councillor Betts?
Thank you. I'd like to remove item C. Attachment C from the city of Penticton.
Okay. 4.4C, yeah. And that'll go down to number 9. Anyone else? Councillor Trainer?
I think there's just a typo under the adoption of council minutes. It should be June 26, not July 26.
Oh, okay, so we can make that as amended. Yeah. Do we, corporate office, do we need to pull that out to amend it, or no, it's just a, okay. Anyone else? Okay, so I'll have approval of the consent agenda. Councillor Peak, Councillor Trainer, all in favor? That carries. On to delegations, Summerland Food Bank.
Good afternoon. I'm taking myself from the council table to introduce Hal Roberts, our coordinator, resource coordinator for the food bank, and he will do the presentation regarding the food bank. We want to do an update and keep council abreast of what is going on and to thank them for the support that we received. So I'll let Hal go ahead with this and I'll go back to my table for a moment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hal.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Holmes and council members. My name is Hal Roberts. I'm a resident of Summerland. I'm currently employed as a resource coordinator with the Summerland Food Bank and Resource Center, a position that I've held for the past 5 years. I speak to you this afternoon on behalf of the Summerland Food Bank and Resource Center Society. Considering the current economic inflationary cycle being experienced in British Columbia, our board and staff wanted you to be aware of the various services and initiatives being offered on a local basis to address the issues of poverty in general and food security and affordable housing in particular. The timing of this presentation to you today was in part prompted by the recent release by the BC Centre for Disease Control of the report Food Costing British Columbia 2022, assessing the affordability of healthy eating. I did in advance send a copy of a infographic for council review. If you don't have copies in front of you, I will leave them with you. I've provided an infographic that provides a quick overview of the 2022 survey results, which have been reported by the local media. The information in the infographic indicates the interconnection among various conditions of poverty, food insecurity, inadequate access to affordable housing, and the impact upon physical and mental health. The takeaway from the 22 report includes the following. The root cause of household food security is not the price of food, it is the lack of adequate income. The emerging issue for 2023 is that food insecurity in British Columbia is impacting a greater spectrum of the population. It is not limited to fixed income households anymore. I will now connect the report to the current situation in Summerland. Prior to the pandemic, the proportion of families with children who use the Summerland Food Bank ran in the range of 20 to 25% of the total number of users during a given month. In May 2022, the proportion of families with children accessing the food bank rose to 31.5%. In December 2022, the proportion reached 38.5%. Also in December 2022, the food bank served 174 households, which was the highest monthly number since the Summerland Food Bank Resource Center database became operational in 2013. The total number of adults and children served during 2022 was 359, which is also the highest monthly number recorded in our database. The statistics vary as we move through 2023. However, as indicated in the food costing report, what has emerged is that food insecurity is affecting a larger spectrum of the population. In Summerland, we have seen an increase in working people and two-income families who require support with receiving food. Despite the successes we achieve at the food bank and resource center in providing support, the one area of constant frustration for our board, our staff, and our volunteers remains the lack of affordable housing. During my tenure as the resource coordinator, it's been very disappointing to be unable to respond effectively to the service requests for housing accommodations that we receive on an ongoing basis. And it is painful to see people who want to remain in this community being compelled to leave to pursue housing options in other communities. As this council is aware, the Summerland Food Bank and Resource Center is a party to an exciting affordable housing project in Summerland that is currently being considered by BC Housing. We await the final decision in BC Housing with great optimism. Our society has made a number of submissions to the District of Summerland over the recent years regarding both affordable housing options and emergency accommodations. This brings us to the plight of the unhoused or homeless in Summerland. Since 2013, the Food Bank and Resource Center has been tracking the number of people who identify themselves as being homeless or on the street when they attend to obtain services. During most years, these statistics had a pattern of ebb and flow. The numbers increased during the warmer months and eventually fell to zero when the cold weather set in. Since 2018, the statistics have shown that the number of people identify as being unhoused or homeless in Summerland is a year-round statistic. In the 12-month period from June 2022 to June 2023, the number of unhoused in Summerland raised from a low of 8 in January 2023 to a high of 13 in June 2023. Even though none of these people have a fixed address, they all identify as being Summerland residents. Due to various life circumstances, they have reached a point where they have no access to secure accommodations. Many have experienced childhood trauma that has been untreated. The current generational cohort of homeless in British Columbia have had insufficient access to mental health, psychiatric services, and addiction treatment due to the downsizing of social and health programs during the last 3 decades. Those who are unhoused in Summerland are largely invisible. Few are seen frequenting the downtown core, as might be observed in larger communities. Many seek shelter on rural and Forest Service roads and use vehicles, tents, or recreational vehicles for shelter. Most of the unhoused population who attend the Food Bank and Resource Center state that they feel safer in Summerland, and they identify the risk and dangers they have experienced in other communities. The Resource Center offers the unhoused population access to facilities including shower, laundry, and kitchen use. The Resource Center also offers short-term storage of luggage and belongings. However, these services are only available during weekdays. There are no other facilities available during evenings and weekends. There are a number of outreach services that do attend Summerland to assist the unhoused. The Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction employs community integration specialists who receive reports of unhoused individuals from the public, emergency responders, the RCMP, and enforcement personnel. During the summer of 2022, 2 families with children were living in Forest Service campgrounds outside of Summerland. These outreach services, with the cooperation of the Food Bank Resource Center and the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction, provided support services to the families until they could be relocated to other Okanagan communities for the start of the school term. There is no question that you as our local government must honor a collective responsibility for affordable housing, shelter supports, and services. The time is right for Summerland to place a priority on a coherent and respectful strategy for affordable housing and emergency shelter. The positive impact of affordable housing and safe emergency placement opportunities will only enhance the future of this community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roberts. Council, any questions? I'll kick it off, I guess. So the discussions you're having with BC Housing, is that, are you still working with Turning Points, or are you looking at your own project now?
Yes, Turning Points is the contractor. We're party to the project.
Okay, and can you provide us any, I guess, update? I mean, it's been a while since we've heard.
Perhaps I can
Yes,
speak.
I'll defer to you.
Thank you. I neglected to say I'm the president of the food bank, which is why I came over to this part of the table. I'd like to say that due to the problems that BC Housing had in the more recent past, the path to getting being viewed through the commissionaire process, which is something they work through, is something that we are still working with. And since the project is Turning Points and not ours, we are not privy to a lot of detail. We just know that it is ongoing and that the meetings continue. There were some staff changes. There have been some holidays, but at this point, we know that they're still working towards it. And we are interested in continuing with that project.
Okay, thank you. I'll keep going until someone else has things on. So a couple of weeks ago, Deputy Mayor and Trainer and I met with Susan Brown, the CEO of Interior Health, and we had kind of an interesting discussion on what Interior's Health's role was in the whole issue of homelessness in the unhoused, and we got talking about communities such as Summerland, who are experiencing homelessness much more than than in the past, that where it's always kind of being perceived as a bigger city problem. And one of the things we were talking about is whether we have sufficient wraparound services here in a community like this in Summerland. And so from your perspective, and you're probably in the best position to be able to tell us this, what is Summerland lacking in respect to wraparound services for unhoused people?
I'm going to let Hal, because he has a social service background. He's been in that for over 20 years in our community. So I'm going to let him speak to that, if I may.
So at the Resource Center, we do partner with various agencies. There are 18 agencies and ministries that partner with the Resource Center in delivering services in Summerland.
You speak up.
The Interior Health is one of our partners. We recently had a meeting with them about exactly this issue, and that part prompted why we're here. The wraparound services, we have what we have at the Resource Center in terms of providing for the daily needs of these folks. What we don't have is any way to provide them shelter. When we refer people to either homeless shelters or treatment centers, that is always outside of Summerland. We have no shelters here. We have no treatment opportunities here. All of the shelters in the communities around us, so that would be Penticton, West Kelowna, and Kelowna, are full. They're always full, and it's very difficult to get people on a waiting list to get into those opportunities. So, as I mentioned, the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction, they prompted they pulled all of us together about 2 years ago in terms of trying to identify and track the homeless and make sure that they are connected to services in what we have to provide. The no that we always have to say is, sorry, we don't have a place for you to stay tonight. We can't refer you to a shelter. The shelters are all full. So the one thing that Summerland needs to address that is some sort of emergency placement facility. We've brought previous proposals to this council. We looked at properties where we could put possibility of a dormitory. We've looked at providing storage facilities for the homeless. They always need a place to store their belongings, their luggage, because they're always on the move. We've looked at the possibility of having shower facilities. We have a shower at the food bank, but as we move through this time of year, our shower is in constant use. It's from the time we open up in the morning to the time we have people lined up for a shower. We have kitchen facilities for them. We have laundry. But like I say, that only lasts during the time the food bank is open. Once we're closed, none of these options occur. There are 3 agencies from Penticton that do provide mobile outreach services to Summerland, and they at various times they visit Summerland during the weekday evenings and the weekends, and they provide things like clothing and emergency food and harm reduction supplies.
Thank you.
But in fact, we need some kind of small facility for a shelter with those outreach things for mental facilities and those kind of attributes that need to be looked after within our community.
Mhm. Thanks. And then I want one final question. So you spoke about the increased use of the food bank, recently, and as times are getting tough. I know of people who have told me who are struggling, and but they're too proud to go to the food bank. I tell them go to the food bank, and they're too proud, and they won't. So how do you? I guess this is more of a philosophical question, but how do we destigmatize, for people in need like that, who have these services available in the community to take advantage of them?
It's an excellent question, because we are aware that happens, that there is a stigma about people attending the food bank. The difference with our food bank is because we're a small community, the volunteers, the staff who work in our food bank, we're the neighbors of the people who require services. We like to think that we're reaching most of the people who need assistance one way or another. We're a partner with the BC 211 helpline. So if any calls come in from seniors who require services, we respond to those. We do an outreach and go to their homes. The last year we have in January, between January and June, we ran the Penny Lane backpack program. And that was a program much like the Starfish program in other communities, where we make backpacks of food available to students to take home on weekends to provide for their family. A lot of the students that were identified by the schools requiring that service were not people that were in touch with our food bank. So we did our best to outreach with them. And in fact, what we have done, in addition to providing the backpacks, that families can anonymously request the support through the schools, and we can make the food available to them that way.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, in terms of making people more aware and perhaps making it more culturally comfortable for people to go to the food bank, the opportunity to get us above ground would help. The fact that we have a sharing stand that allows a good bit of our produce from our gardens that we work with the Alliance and the part-time employment that we provide to be able to do those gardens, and the foods that we take from the research, the agricultural center, all help to get out to the community. But if people like myself who would speak up and say that without working an extra job, and sometimes even with working an extra job and being on a senior pension, I need to go to the food bank. If more people understood real people need to go to the food bank. There are people that are earning $40,000 and $45,000 a year, but still need to go to the food bank. Maybe it's an education process. Maybe I need to write an article, but we need to keep stepping out into the world and identifying that much as we wish food banks and those resources weren't needed, that they are needed, and real people who work very hard or have worked all their life but don't have pensions or investments to live on need to go to the food bank.
Okay, thank you. Don't see anything from anyone else, so I'll thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
It was very helpful.
We'll leave these for.
We'll now go to the public comment opportunity for items on the agenda. Anybody would like to speak to anything that's on the agenda? Don't see any. So we'll move on to our, oh, okay, yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, and just,
Okay.
which agenda item would you?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here. My name is Dwayne Ross.
Yep.
I live at 12917 Prairie Valley Road. First of all, I'd like to articulate that this is not my forte to come here and speak publicly. But I'm going to do my best. To do it
Okay,
in a timely
okay.
fashion.
Yes, Minister, so we have two places on the agenda where people can speak. So this is the
Yeah.
first one regarding agenda item.
I
Okay.
understand that.
Okay, good.
So basically, I'm just going to refer to my notes here that I've quickly made and do the best I can. Just want to basically, I want to speak on the sewer issue that's coming before council here.
Okay.
And I kind of feel that there needs to be a vehicle to provide communication to people, the citizens, taxpayers, to things that are coming before council, so that it doesn't jump up on them all of a sudden when they don't know about it. When they don't, things that are ongoing and you learn about. So I made recent inquiry with somebody about the road conditions in Prairie Valley and what was going to be happening in the future on them. And I found out that this sewer decision was coming before council. And it was going to be coming before council in a few weeks. So I kind of watched for it. And sure enough, we saw the agenda come out on Wednesday afternoon, late Wednesday afternoon. And so I actually thought the meeting was yesterday, but it was today, which is fine. So we've got, a few days to kind of educate ourselves about it. And I feel it's kind of an important thing because it's actually going to shape somewhat Summerland. So I'll have to just go back. So when these things of interest come before council.
Okay, sorry. I'm going to interrupt you again. I should have said and I wonder if we could reset his clock because so we have 2 minutes to speak.
Yeah.
So I'll reset your clock.
We're trying to do the best we can.
Okay,
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I've probably been 2 minutes already.
Go ahead.
So, okay, I'll cut to the chase here. So we didn't know about the sewer proposal till the 11th hour, and we found out about it, and we have interest in that. And I think every taxpayer does. And because it's the middle of summer, it's kind of the way it goes here. Not so much here, but the way it seems to go is the information doesn't get shared so much. And then when these important things come up, or when somebody feels an important thing come up, it comes up in the middle of summer, a very busy time. A lot of people would be on vacation. They're not even paying attention. And actually the item hasn't been something that anybody's, myself, I do read the local papers. I haven't seen anything about this happening. But what is actually shocking about it is the fact that, so everybody here at the table, they're all elected officials, and they're going to be, held accountable by the voters, and others are not. And so I just find it, I would like to ask the council themselves, each councillor, to think long and hard how the choices might shape Summerland in the future. Example, ALC, that's something that's 50 years old. Myself and most of the people sitting at this table today, except for maybe a couple, were teenagers then. And so a lot has changed in those amount of years, and a lot is going to change in the future too. So and there's other needs that are going on in our lives these days as well, such as housing is getting to be a big thing. And it could be that there's properties out there that are actually in the ALC that maybe are actually not really suitable for farming and being in the ALC, and they're maybe better served doing something else. So that might be something that comes forward in the future years. So back to the issue at hand, which is the sewer. So we're here today, and that's why one of the items on the agenda is going to be discussed, and there was two choices. But what I find really shocking, and having communication with my neighbors about it, it's that we, I think, open Facebook on Saturday morning, and we see that, oh, they're going to drop down some pavement on Prairie Valley Road, and we're going to do it on Monday. So Monday, we see that there's 100 meters of pavement dropped down on Prairie Valley Road, and that's actually the decision about the sewer hasn't been made. The people that make that decision are sitting here. And so we ask that you consider that. But I have a question is why, the question I have, or not so much, I don't expect that you're going to answer my question. We know we're getting to the end of our time here. It's why is the timing on this dropping 100 meters of pavement happen the day before the council meeting where the councilors are going to make the choice? Like, it doesn't make sense. And so, I guess I'm just going to end my whole thing here. I'm going to basically say towards the taxpayers from the council and from other people that are in the city. Okay. Amanda Todd. Because that's what it is. You're not notifying anybody. You're just doing stuff, not stuff. I'm not really well spoken in this regard. I admit that. However, I kind of sort of made my point here. We don't understand how the pavement got dropped on the day before the council meeting. You're going to dig up the road.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Thanks for.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. Don't see anyone else. So we'll move on to our business items, BC Infrastructure Planning Grant Program. And that would be Ms. Mullen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, Council. On June 27th, which was after the last council meeting, staff received correspondence that the next intake for the Infrastructure Planning Grant Program has opened up with the deadline of July 12th. This left staff a short window of 2 weeks to confirm a project and to submit an application. Upon review of upcoming projects, staff selected the trails redevelopment plans for Cartwright and Conkle Mountains to be included in the application. These plans are reflected in the District of Summerland 5-year capital plan identified to start in 2024. These plans also align with the 2018 Parks and Recreation Master Plan and 2019 Trails Master Plan. The program offers planning grants for up to $10,000 to assist local governments in developing well-planned community infrastructure that will improve public health and safety, encourage resilient communities, and protect the natural environment while strengthening local and regional economies. The objectives of the trail redevelopment plans are outlined in the council report and include partnership development, environmental assessment, review trail uses and requirements, mapping, future planning, proposed investments, costing, and maintenance. A council resolution is required to support the grant application and will be submitted immediately should council wish to support the submission of the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Any questions? Councillor Peak.
So staff, in looking at the priorities, felt this was the next one to be addressed and that this amount of money would work well for this project.
And thank you for the question through Mr. Mayor, Councillor Peak. We did look at, it is for planning. So we looked ahead to next year and what do we have in the 5-year capital plan as far as plans. We discussed it at the senior management team. We had to work really quickly to get a grant application together and felt that this was appropriate and eligible for the program. The project is $10,000, or the amount of money that we would receive would be $10,000 towards that.
Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to come out and say that I actually think that we consider shelving this project. And the reason is that we're seeing all of the projects that we are undertaking, from construction to recreation to works, all of our project budgets keep growing exponentially. And we've got some really significant recreation projects coming down the pipe in the next couple of years, hopefully, with the pier, the aquatic center. And I note that this potential $10,000 grant is towards up to $100,000 for the reports on the trails project. So for me, I note that this is in our 5-year capital plans to start in 2024, but I ask that we consider as a council pushing out this priority in this project for those reasons. Thank you.
Councillor Barkwell.
I respectfully take a different position from Councillor Betts in that if this is already in our capital plan, then we are not discussing budget capital plan items for 2024 now. We're just discussing whether we would apply for a grant that would go towards that budget item, would reduce that cost. And if we get it, great. If it was really decided that this item in our fall budget review shouldn't go forward, I suppose we would forego the grant. But at the very least, if we're not going to, and if that decision isn't made at that time, then we have made the application. So I see it as a no loss sort of a project.
Thank you. Councillor Peak.
I appreciate the other councillors' remarks, and I have to agree with Councillor Barkwell. This is in fact how government works. If you don't look towards the opportunities to do the development and the planning, then nothing ever happens. So that I feel that this is the time, and the money may be available. I think we should make the application.
Thank you. Councillor Betts.
And always with respect, I enjoy that our discussions are always respectful. That's why we're here at this table. And I appreciate that very deeply. For me, it's that a combined budget allocation is $100,000 towards the redevelopment plans. And I find that we're in a position where many times we are forced to say yes to budget increases. You know, for example, with different items that have increased in cost since we acquired them and they're finally present. And this is one of those trains that I feel we can put the brakes on before it's barreling down unstoppable. So for me, that's my opinion, and I'd like you to consider it.
Thank you. Councillor Trainer.
Thank you, Councillor Betts. That was good points that you made. I think that Cartwright and Conkle Mountains are getting more and more used every year. Like they're on trail forks. They're, people come from all over the valley to mountain bike there. And so unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to let them go for a whole lot longer without starting some kind of plan. Otherwise, they're just going to get taken over. So I think that when grant opportunities come up, it's a good idea to apply for them. And the other thing is that if we start to get a plan going, then if there's other grants that become available in, 1 or 2 years or 3 or 4 years, that would allow us to do more trail upgrading. If we already have a plan in place, then the government's more likely to give us money, kind of like what happened with Giant's Head Mountain. So I understand what you're saying because everything costs so much money right now. But, if the government's giving out some money like this, I think it doesn't hurt to apply for it. We can always change our minds later, but at least then we know we tried.
Thank you. Councillor Barklow.
I think that Councillor Trainer makes some good points there. And I'd also add that, it's kind of getting into a budget discussion, which is not really, I guess it's all related, but it ties in really, really nicely with the discussion we had this morning concerning the eco-village lands and development of that whole project and the trails and all the land that goes, potentially parkland that is up behind it. So the timing of this whole trails plan is important. And I, at this time, would be voting against canceling that from our capital budget, but and this would help reduce that item.
Yeah. Councillor Peak.
May I bring the resolution forward as received in our package?
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Patton. Any further discussion? Motion's on the table to support it. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Betts is opposed, and that carries. Domestic Second Services Letter, Mr. Storvald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In this council report, we have a short update on the domestic second service metering program and specifically a request for decision on the next letter that we'll be sending to DSS customers. We've reached the time of year where DSS customers receive their annual charge bill. Staff expect that many of the customers will be surprised at the 100% rate increase that was decided in December 16th, 2022 during the budget meeting. In this report, we are proposing to include an opt-out option with the 2023 annual charge mail out. So how this would look is we provide an option to the customers to disconnect. If they chose to disconnect, we would waive the 2023 annual charge. That's this year's annual charge. They would be disconnected as soon as possible, and they have until August 31st of this year to decide that. And that decision would be kept on their file. As council knows, meters will be installed on the DSS properties at no cost to the property owner. We know that some of the DSS customers are sort of on the fence, whether or not they'll keep the service or not. And they're waiting for more information to decide that. This would provide those customers with an opportunity to save their money for this year for the annual charge, but would also provide water utility ratepayers the opportunity to save on the cost of installing those meters. So we thought that was a good opportunity for both sides. And we did there's a table in the council report, but if 10% of the domestic second service customers were to choose this option and then eliminate their service, it would save the water utility budget $60,000. And that includes subtracting the amount that we would lose in revenue this year for their annual charge. And that's offset by the cost of the meter savings. So in the report, you'll find a table with the annual charges listed for this year by arable acre size, and a table with the cost estimate, along with the draft letter for the customers. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Council Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do think, Jeremy, thank you, Mr. Storville, Director of Utilities. Thank you for coming forward with this. I do think it's an opportunity to try and reduce costs for those, for the district, for the users who may not select to have one installed on their property, and be able to put the savings difference towards any changes that need to be done to their irrigation systems. So I think that's reasonable. I find trying to find compromise with our DSS customers is so important, and trying to find positive ways forward. So I thank you for coming forward with this.
Thank you. Would you like to bring the motion forward?
Yes, I will. I will, as written on the screen.
Okay. I have a seconder, Councillor Peak. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? None opposed. That carries. 2023 single axle dump truck budget amendment. Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. District staff originally ordered 2 single axle dump trucks to replace 2 older trucks in October of 2021. Due to a variety of reasons, the trucks were delayed, and we are just nearing delivery in the coming weeks. Unfortunately, there have been numerous price increases that the truck suppliers have faced, and these costs are being passed on to us. A few such increases include steel and aluminum prices, freight increases, and of course, COVID-19 shutdowns in manufacturing in Asia. Staff have had several conversations with the manufacturer. However, there's no opportunity to avoid these additional costs. We are able to cancel our order. However, we require these new fleet units for plowing snow this winter. And if we do cancel, the cost to acquire similar units will be substantially more, with a lead time of likely 1.5 to 2 years as well. We had originally planned to include trade-ins of our old crane flatbed truck and 1 old single axle truck, but have reconsidered trading the single axle truck, as we feel it may be wise to keep 1 plow as a backup in case we have breakdowns in the winter. We currently have 2 single axle trucks that can be combined to build a single reliable backup plow. The trade-in value for this truck would have been $7,500. However, we feel there's much more value in having a backup unit for the fleet. Including all the price increases and not trading in the old single axle truck, the additional budget required from the equipment reserve is $88,227. The staff recommendation is on the screen there. Happy to take any question.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Van Elsen?
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Okay. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Betts, any discussion? Councillor Barkwell?
I guess I just a comment more than a question. It doesn't terribly surprise me. I've heard just too many stories like this lately. That's the way it goes, and you know it's take it or leave it. And it is great to have a backup plow. Just when you need it most, you know, a big storm is where something might go wrong for one reason or another. So it seems like a really good plan to me, and I'll support the motion.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll call the question. All in favor? None opposed. That carries. Should we jump into the sewer and then take a break? Yeah? Okay. So the Deer Ridge sewer extension options, Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I get started on this one, I just want to introduce, I'm not sure if everyone in council has met Michael Owen. He's with Associate Engineering. He's the engineer on this project as well as several other ones in Summerland. So he's here to help answer the technical questions towards the end of the presentation, should there be any. So a bit of background on this project. As some of council will remember, in 2019, the initial Deer Ridge sewer servicing project was initiated. The idea was to run a sewer from the highest extent of Deer Ridge down through what is now known as the Eco Village site and along Taylor Place, eventually tying into the sewer on Cartwright Avenue. This project was about 90% designed, but did never actually move into the construction phase. Fast forwarding to 2023, council requested completion of the design, complete with a cost comparison option of routing the sewer down Morrow Avenue to Prairie Valley Road. This option would accommodate 2 developments along Prairie Valley Road with an estimated 26 new units. Although difficult to see on the screen in front of you, the red outlines the service area we are now calling option 1, or the gravity route, which goes down Taylor Place. And the purple outline is what we're calling option 2, or the lift station route, which runs around Prairie Valley Road. So this is option 1, which essentially runs from the upper limits of Deer Ridge right down through to Taylor Place. Sorry. So I guess I'll just get started with some of the benefits and challenges that we found with this option. First of all, the benefits of this route is the biggest benefit is we do not require a lift station, which is a very expensive endeavor, both the upfront cost, but also the ongoing annual maintenance that we need with a lift station. The capital costs and maintenance for this one will also be less because there's significantly less pipe required than in option 2. So there's the lowest capital cost for this one. The other thing is this one will do is it will service about 18 properties along Taylor Place, which option 2 will not do. Some of the challenges moving ahead with this option is we do require 1 right of way to complete the project. We haven't done a geotechnical report yet, and there is potentially bedrock along the Flume Trail, which will be routing the sewer along. As well, the developments along Prairie Valley Road, the 2 of them that we've looked at, we'll need to find an alternate solution for their sewage, which I'll get to in a couple of slides. So this is option 2. It captures flow from the existing residents of Deer Ridge, the upper developments, so that's the development above Deer Ridge, the future Eco Village, and the 2 development sites along Prairie Valley Road. The route would be very similar to option one, except instead of connecting over to the Eco Village and down Taylor Place, it would run down Morrow Avenue and then use a lift station to follow Prairie Valley Road and tie into where we have an existing main right around the intersection with Dark Road. Okay, so some of the benefits of this option, option two, is that we will be able to tie in the developments. There's about 26 lots, I believe it actually is, along the Prairie Valley Road area. They'll be able to tie into it, as well as potentially in the future going up Prairie Valley Road. It is ALR land, mind you, but we could tie in some of the sewers up there with a future project, not included in this project. Another advantage is the pipe remains within the road right of way, which makes for easy maintenance, especially during the winter and when there are weather issues. The other part, and one of the main reasons why we actually have been looking at this, is this work could be completed in conjunction with the 2024 Prairie Valley Road upgrade, which council's endorsed for the study to be done this year, or the design, and then we're moving towards the construction to happen in 2024. Some of the challenges of this option are there is a significant right-of-way that will be required somewhere at the bottom of Morrow Avenue for a lift station to go in. The other part that's quite challenging on this one is Prairie Valley Road, right at the bottom of Morrow, has a significant amount of infrastructure in it. There's several water mains, storm infrastructure, so it is quite tight along there. Again, we would find a way around it, but it is a challenge. And then as stated on the last one, there's ongoing maintenance for a lift station, which would be quite significant. And then there's the 11 properties along Taylor Place that would not be serviced using this option. And this option, as we'll see in a future slide, is significantly higher than option one. Okay, looking at the cost for both routes, the total cost for option one is approximately 4.2 million and option two is 6.4 million. Breaking it down to a per lot cost, option one would be $16,000 per lot and option two is about $21,900 per lot. We've included an option 2B, which is only to show what the additional cost for the lower development units would be if they had to fund the lift station without contributions from the upper developments and existing residents that do not require a pumped station, a lift station. If option one is selected, the developments along Prairie Valley Road would not be part of the project. Associated Engineering has done a very preliminary review of an option that would allow for gravity servicing of these two developments separate from the Deer Ridge Sewer Project. As shown on the map, this option services both development properties via gravity sewer from the high point on Prairie Valley Road down to the existing sewer near Dark Road. This project would be entirely separate from the Deer Ridge project, but could potentially find some construction efficiencies if completed at the same time the district completes the Prairie Valley Road upgrades in 2024. The project would need to be entirely funded by the participating developments along Prairie Valley Road. Staff is recommending that the BC Growing Community Fund be used for the portions of cost breakdown attributed to future development areas to benefit from the sewer expansion project. In this manner, the existing lots would be completed utilizing a local service area. As such, for option one as an example, the existing lots would contribute $16,000 per unit to the local service area. For private developments, the district would negotiate a latecomers agreement with the benefiting property owner that when they proceed to the development, they will pay the district back their share of the per lot cost for the Deer Ridge sewer connection. For example, the upper development lot would have a latecomer payment of $1.39 million for option one. For the Eco Village lands, the district has ownership of these lands and would use the BC Growing Communities Fund for sewer connection and see any benefit from this infrastructure investment through the improved value of the Eco Village land sale. In this regard, staff has received a preliminary appraisal of the eco-village lands with an analysis of the value with and without the sewer connection. That was included in the council package. The total amount of estimated funding required from the BC Growing Communities Fund with this scenario is $2.61 million for option 1 and $3.57 million for option 2. The use of the funds in this manner has several benefits, including allowing Deer Ridge sewer expansion to proceed without it being conditional on the timing of future development from private developers or the eco-village lands. It also allows for the recoupment of grant funding through time and replenishes the reserves. Finally, the local service area can exclude any use of grant funding or the involvement of future development areas with a currently undetermined number of lots. This local area service can be specified to only that portion of funding required from existing lots. So that's 1.61 million for option 1 and 2.27 million for option 2. The staff recommendation is that staff are directed to proceed with detailed design of option 1 in the July 18, 2023 Deer Ridge Sewer Extension Options Report from the Director of Works and Infrastructure, and that staff are directed to initiate the council-initiated local area service process for option 1 of the Deer Ridge Sewer Extension in accordance with the Community Charter, Section 213. I'm happy to take any questions council may have.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barkwell, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does the capacity of this pipe allow for any expansion to the district-owned lands to the west of Deer Ridge? I mean, we don't know when, maybe in my lifetime, maybe not, but yeah, just wondered if that would just there.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Yes, when we did the design in 2019, we did look at a fair number of lots, and that will be confirmed in the final design. How many of those lots could be developed in the future?
Councillor Van Elton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question through to Joe. So then this option 1 would take us up over Taylor Place, correct? So that
Correct.
then, as we were having a discussion this morning, that would be a walkable bicycle type route, short route to our community from the Eco Village homeowners in the future, possibly.
Yes, through the mayor. In theory, yes, it could. The way the right-of-way from the Flume Trail down to Taylor Place is worded right now, we're not sure that it allows for pedestrian traffic, but we would want to talk with those homeowners and allow that to happen because it would be a good connection for sure.
Councillor Trainer.
So for option 2A, maybe you already answered this and I missed it, but why can we not tie into Taylor as well? Like I see that the purple boundary goes right to the cul-de-sac at Taylor. How come it can't be added on there?
Through the mayor, we could add that on. It would just be a significant additional cost because we would have to run the sewer all the way along the Flume line and then down through that right of way and onto Taylor, but it could be done. But really, if we're doing the other option, we would likely just do a local area service for Taylor Place.
Okay, and then I just have, I guess, a philosophical question. When you're doing a big project like this, is it better to try to get the most people that you can on when you're embarking on this, or do you really have to just narrow it down in terms of price? Like, I'm just trying to think of long term. Like, I know we got to think about our money today, but when you're planning out the future, is it not better to try to get as many as you can in each time you do construction?
Absolutely, through the mayor. Yeah, we did try to maximize as many units as we could, but we also try to minimize the cost per unit to get that done. And then in the future, we can do alternate areas for that. But we did really maximize as much as we could in this area under both options.
Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do note, Deputy Mayor Trainer, that in the Associated Engineering memo, they do talk about how option 1 had 101 properties serviced and option 2 had 104 properties. It seemed very similar, but with a big cost difference. But my question to our Director of Works is, if in the event bedrock is found in the flume, in the trail that would follow the flume path, what would be the impact? Dynamite? I mean, how do you work around that?
Thanks. Good question through the mayor. There's several different ways of doing it. It depends what type of bedrock and how much of it we encounter. If it's a small amount, we can, depending on where it is, we can bring up the elevation of the sewer, or we can actually rock hammer it out. If it's significant rock, then we would blast it. And the blasting is done so that you really don't even feel it a couple of parcels over. So they do blast in areas like this all the time at an additional cost, obviously.
Thank you. Just a different question, but a follow-up. So in thinking, there was the option 1 and option 2, and then 2B. But in presenting the additional option at the end where we could service Prairie Valley on a gravity that would tie in near Dark Road, would that be a second separate project that would need to be funded separately?
Yes, through the mayor. Good question and point of clarity. It would be a completely separate project. So we would proceed with option 1 as it's presented here. And then we would work with the 2 developers, mainly are the ones that would utilize that. And they would help fund and design that project. We would just take their design and put it into our road design, which we're currently working on for the construction next year, because we are redoing that, or it's in the financial plan to redo that in the coming year.
Thank you for clarity. So then if residents on Prairie Valley Road wanted to tie in to that sewer project at that time, would that be an option, even though the developer's funding some of the sanitary project?
Yes, through the mayor, there are mechanisms for that to happen. It would be potentially a latecomer. So the developer would put all the infrastructure in, and then the residents would be able to tie in after that at a predetermined cost. Or they can work together right off the get-go. I would imagine the developers would actually petition the people in the area and ask them if they would like to contribute at the time. That would make the most sense.
Thanks so much.
So along those lines, for option 2B, do we know if the lower developments, those property owners or developers would be interested in funding a lift station?
Through the mayor. I think we've had some preliminary conversations with them, and they are interested in looking at that option. Again, we just had this finalized last week, so we haven't gone into detailed discussion, but I believe knowing what the approximate costs are and that the district's doing some works in the area in the coming year, I think they would likely be interested, but it's something we would have to negotiate with them.
So it's a little difficult to make a decision if we don't have that information, no? Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you. Question through to Joe, if I could. These 2 developers, they would still have the opportunity or the ability to pump up? And if they had to pump up, is that a significant cost compared to Prairie Valley option 2B?
Yes, through the mayor. It would be significant. The cost both for the initial install of the lift station, but then the ongoing maintenance of it would be significant compared to the costs of running along Prairie Valley Road. I think it would be a bit cheaper. Brad may have a bit more information about the developers discussion.
Yeah. So following the publishing of this report last week, we did reach out to those 2 property owners that are on Prairie Valley Road and just made them aware that this report was live, and for their information, we also pointed out that there was this alternative servicing option along Prairie Valley Road. that Associated Engineering has provided as an option for their developments, and they were very receptive to that potential option, especially if it's avoiding the need for a lift station and that additional cost. So they wanted to work with us on the potential of including some sort of sewer project as part of the Prairie Valley Road rehabilitation project, but we haven't started that discussion yet.
Councillor Barkwell.
Just to make sure I don't misunderstand something, when Mayor Holmes talked about the difficulty of making a decision. Right now, sort of the obvious choice by $2 million is option one, but that doesn't preclude them from doing this separate project down. Yeah, so that's not really a problem at all. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got lots of questions today on this one. This one might be for Renee in finance. So the local service area, this is actually, I'm unfamiliar with it. So in terms of the funding, I see the explanation that this would be $16,000 per property or et cetera. But how is that ultimately handled with our residents?
Right, Councillor Betts. So the local service area, the best way to describe it is almost like a mini alternative approval process. So there's two options. It can either be resident driven or it can be council initiated. In the case that Joe's talking about, this would be council initiated. So essentially we would develop council would direct us, which is included in as part of the resolution. They would direct us to proceed, which means we would have to pick a service area, which would be in the option. We would have to develop a petition. We would have to make the residents aware. And so the residents would have the ability to sign the position against the project. So if we got 50% plus one, or that represented 50% of the total land base in that area, it would actually turn down the project. So if we didn't receive that, so if we didn't receive the 50%, then we could proceed with the project and they would have to pay the amount per lot.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, okay, I understand, but then the financing is on the shoulders of the resident. And so how is it financed? Is it through property tax? Is it a 30-year amortization? Like, how does it work? Yes.
We'll ask the finance department to answer that one.
Yes, through the mayor. It would be a parcel tax collected. So it would be specific to those properties within the local service area, and it would be an annual amount as a parcel tax.
Over how long of a period? Over how long of a period?
Typically 20 years. We would look at the amount and then decide from there.
Thank you.
No problem.
Councilman Elfin.
And on that note, there's, up in Deer Ridge, there are systems failing today that are costing people $50,000, $60,000 to replace a septic field. So if they opted in on this system, they would be paying X amount a year. For 20 years, it's far less cost than replacing your septic field, that's for sure. Plus, there's also the option in the future, there's some very large lots up in the Deer Ridge area. They could be looking at carriage homes. Right now it's all bedrock, so carriage homes would definitely not fly. And further, if I may, like with option one, that'll take us up to the Deer Ridge and beyond to private lands and district-owned properties, possibly Sunset Place, Eco Village. With option two, there was talk about, potentially in the future, taking it further down Prairie Valley Road towards like our landfill. But, to me, that's all 90% of that's ALR. So let's to me personally, I think concentrating on option, what the recommendation says would make most sense to me is that we'll pick up that future development at the top of Deer Ridge area. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Van Elfen.
I'd like to move the staff recommendation, please.
Okay, just get that on the screen. There we go. So that's option one. Have a seconder, please. Councillor Barkwell. Any further discussion? Councillor Barkwell.
I guess since we're past the question area and into discussion, I guess I would say that this is an easier decision than I expected we'd be facing. $16,000 in as far as sewer hookups is definitely on the low end of the scale. We approved one years ago. It was in the 20 somethings. It cost even with unexpected increases or something. That's a pretty darn good price. And considering the problems, as Councillor Van Elfen pointed out, I'm told a number of times about somebody paid like $70,000 on Morrow Avenue. So I kind of expect, but you don't know, but I think it'll be well received by the Deer Ridge people.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I was wondering, did the residents of Taylor Place have never looked into becoming a service area just on their own? You would have think it would have been certainly worth their while. Anyway, Councillor Van Elfen, then Councillor Barkwell.
Just a comment, and I want to say thanks to staff. I thought this day would never come, honest to God. Being that it is our future growth area out in that area, I've been kind of advocating for this for a long time, and I'm so grateful to see it finally coming forward. And Deer Ridge has been a nightmare, from the conception. We've had, agricultural situations or just below Deer Ridge suffering from, runoff and what have you going through their farms and stuff. And once and for all, this will get that cleaned up. Plus the groundwater that's running down to is it Prairie Creek? Down that way. So this will help clean up the area environmentally. And I think it's a huge plus for our community in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bark.
Just on the environmental aspects, a sewer system may be failing and you're not aware of it. It's what's happening is that there's an anaerobic, the area, the effluent is in an anaerobic area and flowing underground all the way down to Prairie Creek, where it hasn't really been properly treated. It has to be near the surface in the aerobic zone of the land to be properly treated through the natural process of the septic system. So I think there's a bigger problem there than we are all aware of.
Councillor Trainer.
I just have a quick question. When we were on our tour again of the sewage treatment plant, the guy there said that the plant was nearing, I think, 75 or 80% capacity. So by adding 100 more properties on, plus any other future development, how will that affect the sewage treatment plant now?
Maybe.
And I guess when would we be expecting to upgrade it?
Mr. Starville could take that one. Thanks.
Thank you for the question. Through the mayor, we're actually looking at our process right now. That's not very many homes actually for Summerland. There's, I believe, Devin, there's nearly 9,000 customers on the wastewater plant right now. So those are individuals. So at 100 or so people or properties, it's not a huge impact. Although we do have Hunters Hill and other developments that we're looking at in town, lots of infill. So there are more and more people moving to Summerland. I think the last Stats Canada statistics were 100 people per year were being added to Summerland. So a portion of those are using the wastewater treatment plant, but we are looking at the process there.
So we've got some years left with that plant then.
We're looking at the process and we're doing the numbers on that now. So yeah, we'll know with more surety in the short future here. But because of the capital upgrades we're doing at the wastewater plant with the primary clarifier, we're actually analyzing the process right now.
Okay, Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that this project is so important when we're talking about the growth of Summerland, to try and put residential expansion into areas that aren't on our ALR lands and trying to find homes for people as our country grows and as our provincial population grows, that we need to be prepared, and obviously getting homes on sewer and so that we can add density, I think is just really, really important. So I think this is a great project, and I'm in support of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So on that, I'll call the question. All in favor? None opposed, that carries. I think we should just plow on, eh? Yeah. Okay, so Eco Village, Mr. Donovan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just getting settled here. Okay, if council remembers back in the 2023 budget process, we had included as part of our budget a senior planner position for the Development Services Department. And primarily the senior planner role was going to be a role to support myself as the Director of Development Services for the district and work on strategic projects of council that we're planning in nature, as well as provide high level planning support for complex planning applications that were being received by the District of Summerland. So we went out to market actually in the fall of 2022, and then once again in early 2023, trying to recruit that role, and we were unsuccessful in trying to attract that higher level type planning position to the District of Summerland. So as a result of this effort, and because we were unsuccessful, we decided to go for a more junior role as a planner position, and in hope of attracting someone with maybe a little bit less experience that were willing to come to Summerland and be trained a bit more so in our community. And we were successful with that recruitment process, and we in council this morning met Tyson Baker. He's our new planner one, started with us in early May. But in terms of council's key strategic projects, so the Eco Village being one, as well as the downtown plan, they were included in the strategic plan with the assumption that we were going to get that senior planner position, and that planner was going to be actively working towards those projects. Currently as well, we have an as and when planning contract with two firms, one with Associate Engineering and the other with Urban Systems. We've asked them both to provide quotation for work to help in cases of staff vacancy, as well as when workload demands additional resources from them. So we have quotations for a potential support project for planning side for the Eco Village development. As council has heard this morning in our council of the whole meeting, we have a number of implementation items to work on. One is creating a comprehensive development zone, perhaps either restrictive covenant or development permit guidelines in conformance with the Eco Village conceptual plan that was endorsed last year by council. We have to go through a subdivision process for our lands to identify the solar project sites separate from the development areas, as well as the park areas that we want to retain, the road areas, et cetera. So the estimates we got from both our as and when planning our contractors is both around the same range of $45,000. We also are looking at potentially having some additional studies as part of this next phase implementation work. As part of our conceptual plan, we did engage with Penticton Indian Band, and they informed us that they recommend us doing some further studies. One was an archaeological impact assessment, and another study was a traditional ecological knowledge assessment, a tech assessment. So that was some additional scope items that we are recommending that we proceed with if we're able to move forward with PIV on those items. And then another optional item of council's, and you can see it as an alternative option in the options provided in my report, is a market analysis to kind of understand like what type of developer would be interested in this project, what's the type of marketing angle that we can try to attract the right developer with. So that's an optional item that council has included in this report. But in order to move forward with this implementation work, I am asking council today for some additional staff resources in order to contract and primarily Modus Planning and Design is our lead candidate. They've assembled a highly reputable team of architecture, landscape architecture, and civil engineering design to complete the next step items for our Eco Village project and have the land ready for sale as targeted in the council's strategic plan for Q2 next year, 2024. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Council questions. Councillor Peak.
These funds are available through our reserve so that we can go forward with this. And have we used this firm before?
Through your worship to Councillor Peak, I believe the first conceptual plan installment of funds for developing the concept plan came from the land sale reserve as well. And the thought process is that this is an investment in our land so that we can eventually get those returns back when we go to sell the land and replenish the reserve.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Van Elfen.
I will move the motion.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Peak. Any discussion? Councillor Van Elfen.
Just a comment, you know, I mean, I'm looking at the previous slide on the Deer Ridge sewer and the Eco Village property with sewer. We're looking at $4,455,000. I mean, $55,000 is a, you know, I'm not gonna say a small price to pay, but it's a part of doing business. And if we want to get top dollar for taxpayers' land, it's going to cost us a bit of money to get to that point. So it's saleable. Right now, it's saleable, but we're never going to get our top value. So I think we're going to have to hire the right people. So thanks for bringing it forward.
Thank you. Councillor Barkwell.
Yes, I support the motion. It doesn't surprise me at all. This is outside the scope of normal planning and development that the staff face. And I kind of expected this would be coming. And yeah, it's great. Well, it's not great, but I mean, it's it's necessary, as Councillor Van Elfen said.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? None opposed. That carries. There's no bylaws for adoption. Items removed from consent agenda. The City of Penticton letter. Councillor Betts.
Thank you. Okay, that was item C from the City of Penticton. And okay, so this is in regards to the $10 million that's going towards portable air conditioners for to support the most vulnerable, but that because we own our own electrical utility, that we're not included. The District of Summerland is not included. So I just wondered if we wouldn't have a similar discussion as we did with the $100 hydro rebates, to be able to follow up, to be sure that residents in Summerland would have access to the same program.
Okay, so you suggesting that perhaps I should write a letter to the Premier in support of Penticton's letter? Is that?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure. If that's the most reasonable solution.
I don't know. CEO, do you think that's the best approach?
Yeah, it doesn't hurt.
Okay. Do we need a motion on that? Yeah. Okay. So if you want to bring that forward, Councillor Betts.
I move that we write a letter in support of the District of Summerland residents having access to the BC Hydro $10 million portable air conditioner program.
Okay, seconder, Councillor Van Elfen. Any discussion? Councillor Barkwell.
I don't know if it's worth pointing out, but we buy our power from Fortis, who buys some of their power, half of their power, or a portion of it, depends from year to year, 30% from BC Hydro. So we are indirectly BC Hydro customers here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that carries. Moving on to public comment period. Marianne?
Marianne McDonald, 6505 McDonald Place. It's concerning the letter of correspondence 4.4. I hope council endorse the letter from the Okanagan Basin Water Board recommending consideration of the infrastructure consequences on the issue of affordable housing and strongly recommending focusing on infrastructure costs. I believe it provides a more holistic view for building, especially in smaller communities such as Summerland. To quote, a lack of infrastructure such as the presence of community sewer, drinking water, pipe capacity, roads, or schools can limit planning for affordable housing development options. If housing is to be placed in these areas, infrastructure development must also be required component of the Homes for People Action Plan, with increased options for infrastructure funding by senior levels of government. This concept influences many of the decisions you are being asked to make today, which will have long-lasting implications for our community. Building where sewer is available is critical to the health of our environment. Avoiding floodplains is a no-brainer. And some of the projects already on the drawing board are facing difficulties because of required infrastructure upgrades. A number of vacant lots in the downtown core with construction proposals are waiting because government funding for infrastructure would make it possible for this council to spend the money after ranking your priorities in the most efficient way to make progress in these areas. I see it as a win-win situation, less cost to individual entrepreneurs and less tax increases for the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Else? Mr. Bessler, just before you start, if I could ask you again if you ensure that you're respectful. I know last time you said you were always respectful, well, first of all, it would be respectful if you removed your hat. It would be respectful not to do any name calling. That's not only is that disrespectful, but it's also a form of bullying. Attacking a person's character is not respectful. It's possible to raise issues and it's possible to hold people to account without ad hominem attacks. In fact, if you're interested in solutions and rather than just stirring a pot, the best way to go about it is to be diplomatic. And I know you might not be, a lot of people aren't aware, but it's not respectful to refer to members of council by their first name. We call them Councillor so-and-so, or myself, Mayor so-and-so. And that's not showing respect to the individual person that's up here. It's showing respect to the democratic process. It's showing respect to the people of Summerland's representatives. And as mayor, I'm responsible for ensuring order and decorum is maintained at council meetings. And I have to keep in mind that a council meeting is both an open public forum, but it's also a workplace. And we need to ensure our meetings comply with provincial and federal workplace laws, with the provincial community charter, and with our own council procedure bylaw. So I appreciate not everybody knows the proper rules of order at a council meeting. And to address that, many municipalities are now publishing and posting rules of decorum in their council chambers. It's a very common practice in the United States. And if council is agreeable, I would ask our corporate officer to draft some rules of decorum for our council chambers and that they can distribute to council to consider. So I just put that out to you right now. If we're all agreeable to that, our corporate officer will come back to us. So that's good. Okay. Mr. Bessler, proceed.
Okay, well, I first had comments about the Rotary Pier, but because you wanted to again bring up decorum, there's been something on my mind at the Action Fest this year, Saturday night, around 7 o'clock. I was walking my dog on Main Street, going down Main Street. You probably remember this, don't you? Yeah. And you were coming this way from the park and our timing was where we were going to cross paths, and in a friendly tone, I said, "Hey, how's it going, Doug?" You looked at me with disgust in your face and just walked away. Again, no, you did not wave to me, Doug. You might be trying to justify it now because it was wrong what you did. And it's really ironic considering how you're trying to lecture me again on decorum and rules and processes. I have followed the rules. I have followed the processes. I have been respectful. So this is a case maybe where you need to practice what you preach because you're again singling me out. You know, I'm raising important issues. You know, you're trying to mislead people on issues, and I'm pointing that out. And sure, it makes you uncomfortable, but again, you talk about the importance of democracy. Holding public officials accountable is a key tenet of that, and you seem to be forgetting that. It's dictators who want to silence opposition. You should be embracing that I'm shining a light and bringing attention to what goes on in these council chambers. So again, I would encourage you to practice what you preach because talk is cheap. Now, with respect to the pier, I asked Joe earlier when the pilings were planning to be removed. And Joe informed me that it's not scheduled yet. Now, the pier is only available, the pilings are only available to be removed from July until early October. And I'm concerned if the pilings are not removed this year, then July will be the earliest next year. And then that'll set us back a whole year. So I would encourage council and staff to stay on top of the pier issue and not let it fall out of mind because it's an important issue for a number of people in Summerland. Thank you.
Thank you. We probably should have an update on the pier at the next council meeting, I would think. I would like a motion to close the meeting to the public. Councillor Van Elfen, second, Councillor Barkwell. Oh, sorry, sir. Yes, now, yeah. Yeah.
My name is Dwayne Ross, 12917 Prairie Valley Road. And comments, maybe some questions and probably don't expect they'll be answered. So as we know, Prairie Valley Road's in really tough shape, and we're kind of curious to what the extent of the repair is going to be on it. We have got the Prairie Valley Highway going on there, and it's extremely poor shape, and the commercial vehicle traffic there is exceptionally high. We've got a whole bunch of new homes going to be going in the area. It's going to probably, I would expect that there's going to be several hundred more trips per day. And so we're just kind of curious. So that's the kind of the question. Another question I have also is we're constantly picking up garbage that falls off of cars, trucks, trailers going to the dump. And I'm doing it on a weekly basis, like actually almost a daily basis. For an example, on Saturday morning, there was a whole bunch of trash that got thrown out into the middle of the road. I actually didn't pick it up myself. I was leaving the property. I saw it there. I came back and somebody picked it up. But it was only an hour or so later that there's a pallet in the middle of the road. And so I'm sure there's councillors that drive out and around that curve regularly. And just take a look off to the right, you'll see the pallet sitting there. And going forward, there has been a lot of other stuff, different garbage. So the one particular day last year, there was a load of hazardous waste. Okay, and it was quite windy. And it was blown out of the bag and it was blowing all over. I had followed some previous recommendations I had gotten from bylaw to make a call to the yard to ask them to come and pick it up. And, we don't want to confront the staff or be disrespectful to them in any way. But I don't think they really appreciated it either. I called on the one day, which is a Thursday, probably after about 2:00 and asked if they could come by and pick it up. It was a long weekend. And on the Friday at about 3:00, I was concerned that it wasn't going to be picked up. And so I called back and, I wasn't well received. I was pleasant. And, they were as pleasant as they could be, but they weren't really well received neither. And it became apparent that it wasn't going to be picked up. So I just did the right thing. And, I shouldn't have to pay to get this taken to the dump. So I did the right thing and I put it in a box and delivered it to the front stairs of the yard. And they probably wondered why it showed up there. But things like the pallet that's there now, okay, I'm not going to let that sit there, right? I'm going to pick that up and I'm going to put it someplace. And would be nice to have some direction on what I should do with that. What do you guys think I should do with that pallet that's sitting there?
I don't have an answer to that, but I'll take note of it. And
Yeah.
you could actually speak to Mr.
So when I've called
Mitchell,
staff before,
yeah.
like I say, I don't want to confront staff. I don't want to, you know what I mean? I was a worker for all my life too.
Yeah, so we'll take note of that.
Yeah.
And Mr. Mitchell there can give you update on what the plans are for
Thank
Prairie
you.
Valley Road.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, if I motion to close the meeting to the public, please. Councillor Van Elfen and Councillor Betts, all in favor, carried.